On today's episode, we are going to be taking these two sad and tired and broken side tables that we picked up from a warehouse where everything was selling for $1 a piece, and we are going to be completely changing them to give them some French country flair. I'm going to show you a lot of great DIY skills that you can practice at home on some pieces that you may have that you think are too far gone, and I'm going to show you how you can still turn those pieces into something gorgeous, classic, or even a little bit fancy in this French country flip makeover video. Both of these tables are going to get tons of character and they're going to look absolutely adorable by the end. So stay tuned and see how we flip these into some French country beauties.
Hey guys, welcome back to Desert DIY. If you are new here, my name is Corey. Today we are continuing some of the projects that were left over from my last video where we went into this insanely hoarded huge warehouse where everything was being sold for $1 a piece.
And if you missed that video where I flipped the other pieces, I'll have that linked in the description box down below.
I asked you guys to vote on what color you wanted to paint these nightstands that were in that group of things that I picked up.
In case you didn't get to see that video yet, these were all the pieces that we picked up from that warehouse, and we finished a ton of them in my last video already, and these two pieces are the ones that I asked you to vote on for a paint color.
And you guys, it was a tight race, but the color that won was...
Drum roll, please.
French blue, which of course I'm happy with since that's like my favorite color ever. It was a really tight race though. So second place was navy, which means that my next piece that I'm gonna do in a navy. If you remember, recently I did the bottom half of a China hutch in black. Well, the top half is the piece that I'm gonna do in navy. So stay tuned for that coming up really soon.
So now it's time for us to get started. These two are so cute, have so much great potential, but they are in a little bit of rough shape. The one on the left, not so bad as the one on the right. This one, I believe, is probably ranch style furniture from the 1950s or 60s, and I think that it definitely has more of a farmhouse look than a French country look as it is right now. And there are so many different ways that you could flip this piece of furniture. You could do it in bare wood or paint it or unpainted or however you want to do it, but we are going with a French country look for both of these pieces. And as I got a closer look at this second piece, I realized that it was actually in much, much worse condition than I originally thought. I just saw the shape and the bones of this piece and grabbed it really quick before anybody else could get it. But on closer examination, I see that this drawer is not going to be salvageable. I think that if we did try to keep it, it would be so much more work than it would be worth in a resale value as far as my time and labor and supplies go. So what we're going to do is actually completely transform this piece and make it unrecognizable by removing all of the parts that are not worth fixing. That drawer was really swollen as well, and that's not something that I can repair with what skills that I have. I also found this cute little tablecloth inside there, so maybe I'll clean this up in a future video and see if we can kind of restore its beauty. It did have quite a bit of stains on it. But let's get this drawer taken out of here. The handle on it was so pretty. It was a really unique version of this style. It had a really cool texture to it with all those lines in there. So I am going to keep that for a future project.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this out and have it be open like how this is open on this table so that they match a little bit better. I mean, they don't really match, but I like the mix match. And once they're the same color, it's really going to go well together, I think. But this is quite the experiment. But we have to take all of this out. And then it has a little trim here, and that is structural. And it also has that down there, which is structural. And then this is also structural. So we're going to cut this short here, so it still holds the front and back legs together, and do the same thing on the back and on the other side as well. It's definitely a tall order. I don't know if it'll be possible, but we're gonna try.
If you're wondering what tool this is an oscillating multi-tool. Mine is a Milwaukee brand, but the Dremel brand is also very good. And I like the battery-powered version that we have because the cords are usually very short on the ones that are plug-in style. And these things are so helpful for so many different projects. So if you are somebody who wants to start doing DIYs, or if you're somebody who just likes to be handy around the house and you're wondering what tools you're going to need, this thing can do so many different things. You can sand with it, you can cut metal, you can cut wood. I think you can also cut stone with it with a different type of blade, like a diamond blade. So this is definitely a tool that I would recommend you add to your arsenal of power tools for anybody at any DIY level. For the longer straight cuts, we switched to our battery-powered jigsaw just because the blade we had on our oscillating tool, our multi-tool, was getting kind of dull and we didn't have any more on us. So we just switched to this to make it quicker. After removing all those parts off of this table, it was time to mix up some Bondo and repair the spots where we cut to make sure we had some nice smooth surfaces there. If you've never worked with Bondo before, it's actually really easy and it dries really quickly when you use some cream hardener mixed in there. Usually you buy them together, but sometimes you have to buy them separate. The cream hardener should be about a toothpaste size amount for every golf ball sized amount of Bondo. Then you just spread it on and it's usually rock hard within about 15 minutes. The more hardener you use, the faster it dries. The less you use, the slower it dries. And while I'm waiting for this Bondo to dry, I'm going to tighten up all the screws on here as well as replace any that were missing. For this corner, there was a little bit of wood missing around where the screw goes in, and so I'm going to make sure to make it extra strong with some wood glue and then screwing it back in, and then I'm also going to be putting some tack nails in there for even more added strength. I want this piece to stand the test of time going forward. To address this broken trim on the side here, I'm going to be using Bondo again, but I need to make a mold to put the Bondo in to make it match the rest of the molding. So on the opposite side, I'm going to spray some olive oil in my little sprayer. I don't use any Pam or any of those canned sprays for cooking because I don't like the added ingredients that come in there. And so what I do is I just bought a sprayer off Amazon and I put my own olive oil in there. And then I'm going to use that because when you put your hot glue on to make a mold, you need something like an oil to help it pop back off when you're done. Otherwise, you could end up breaking your mold. If you have Pam or any other kind of spray nonstick stuff, that would work too. And you just let that hot glue set and get nice and hard, and then you can pop it off using a flathead screwdriver. Just take it nice and slow to make sure that you don't break it. I've never had an issue with mine breaking, and this actually works so well. This is my second time doing it, but look at how accurate that mold is. And this is so much cheaper than buying those sets that are in a box for making molds. like way cheaper. This probably cost me like maybe $1 worth of glue, and those mold sets are usually almost $20 depending on where you buy it. In order to make the Bondo have something to stick to it, I'm going to put some nails in here for support, so that way that Bondo stays on here nice and strong. If you think about it, it's a little bit like doing concrete, where they put rebar in the concrete to make it stronger and stay together. When I mixed my Bondo for the mold, I made sure to add some extra cream hardener in there because of how thick that amount of Bondo is. I wanted it to still dry really quickly, so this is where that comes in handy, that you can add in more or less of the cream hardener to make it dry faster or slower. You also want to make sure to wipe off any excess Bondo that comes out of the mold once you have it in place. You're also going to want to remove the mold before it is completely dry, so that you can kind of shape and mold any parts that didn't fit perfectly. I had to cut off a little bit of extra on the back of it using that same putty knife, and I just kind of cleaned it up a little bit more too. And this is so much easier to do while the Bondo is not fully dry yet. While I was waiting for that to fully harden, I decided to go ahead and start sanding the areas that were dry and get them nice and flat and smooth. I have shaped it into the correct shape now, but there were some air bubble issues from the Bondo from inside the mold. So I just went back and filled in those spots where there was air bubbles in that Bondo originally. And then I'll go back and sand this again once it is dry. Again, I added extra cream hardener to this so that it'll dry even faster. Look at how great this repair is looking now. You would never know that that huge chunk was missing out of the top of this table. We need to clean it up and get all the dust off of it before we take it to paint on some shellac. This piece is veneered in mahogany. Mahogany has a very red stain to it. If you do not seal in that stain, sometimes it can bleed through whatever paint finish that you put on top of it. I have noticed that when you paint with enamel paints, sometimes it can completely seal in that mahogany stain and you have no issues with any of that stain coming through your paint. But it does take more coats in order to get that effect and really seal in that mahogany. So a quicker way to do that is to just spray the entire piece with shellac, and that will lock in all of that wood stain so that it doesn't show through in your paint. I only had 2.5 cans of the French blue enamel paint that I'm going to be using today, so I didn't want to have to do tons and tons of coats to hide any bleed through that came out. So the shellac was very important in this makeover. The color we went with was called Peaceful Blue by Rust-Oleum, and it's a satin enamel. When repainting a piece of furniture or flipping furniture, you should always start with the piece upside down first. If you have been watching my channel for a long time, you already know this, and you're probably already doing it too. So high five to you. But if you are new to my channel, you should always start upside down and then go right side up with your second coat. This makes sure that you don't miss any spots. Today you're going to notice that I do not paint the underneath side of this piece of furniture. The reason for that is because I only had 2.5 cans of spray paint for this project, and I needed this project to stay budget friendly so that I could ask a price that is affordable for my customers. And honestly, when you are flipping a piece of furniture, you do not have to paint or finish parts that were not painted or finished by the original manufacturer. So the backside of a dresser or underneath a piece of furniture, those are parts of furniture that you don't have to paint, but I usually do. And I usually do that just as a way of feeling comfortable that the whole entire piece is done. But in this case, I didn't have enough paint to do that extra amount of painting. And so this will be like one of the only times that I didn't fully paint the underneath side of something, but that is okay. And for others who are flipping, it is okay to leave parts unfinished that were unfinished by the original manufacturer. That is the real rule of thumb that you should follow. And if you look up close, you can see there are still imperfections in the wood. There's still little pieces that are gouged and little bumps and bruises here, and that is totally okay. And if you have pieces that are really, really destroyed and are never going to look perfect again, you can still make them look beautiful. And I'm going to show you that today, how leaving those imperfections is actually going to be a strength for it in the end. It is going to look beautiful and truly antique at the end of this project. I promise you that all those little things that you can see, all the imperfections in the paint, are going to stand out as a good thing. If you love antiques, you'll know what I mean. But right now we're adding all that French country detail, that French provincial beautiful detail that we all love so much. I'm using liquid gold leaf, and this is a really good paint product. It has a little bit of a smell to it, so just be aware of that. But I'm using this because it goes on with a full coverage and it's very watery, so it's easy to spread and work with on just about any surface. If I were to use Rub and Buff, it would be hard to get a really accurate, perfect line when painting with it because it's a wax. And also, I don't think it would have stuck very well to this enamel paint because it is a smooth finished paint. So I used a small paintbrush and I created a nice gold edge detail to help this top part stand out. Instead of just looking like a big blue table, I wanted it to have those beautiful French provincial details that you would see in a chateau 200 years ago. I'm also going to do the same thing on the beautiful details in the front here. I want them to stand out and pop, and I don't want anybody to notice the imperfections of it and instead see it as an antique instead of seeing it as something that is not perfect. Now I'm going to take this color called Chateau by Fusion and create even more dimension on the piece. Since we lost that gorgeous drawer on the front, I still need to add extra character in order to make this piece stand out and look purposeful in its design. So I'm adding that Chateau color, which is a bit of a grayish white, to all the details along the front of the piece, and this is going to make it look more authentically French. The final step is what is going to make this now appear to be antique. I'm going to take some clear wax and add just a hint of dark wax to the clear wax and wax the entire piece to give it a little bit of an aged look. This will get into the grooves of all those imperfections and help them stand out in a way that makes it look authentically antique instead of looking just drab or worn down. We want it to look like it has been sitting in a chateau in France, collecting dust and holding on to tons of stories of the things that it has seen and experienced in its 200 years of life. But this piece is actually probably from the 1960s, and so we have to add that character ourselves, and we're going to do that with just putting on this mixture of wax. I made sure to only use a little bit less than a dime-sized amount of the dark wax into the clear wax. Another way that you can do this is to do the entire piece in clear wax first, and then go over it with dark wax in the areas that you want it to have some dimension, but this just gets it done much more quickly. When using dark wax, it's a fine balance between looking dirty and looking antique. I think that I got the right balance here with just a little bit of dimension into the wood grain and into the imperfections to where it looks antique but not dirty. Let me know what you think of how this is looking so far in the comments down below. I am just blown away. I can't believe how different this looks from what we started with. As much as I loved the drawer and that scallop detail on the front that actually drew me to this piece in the first place, they just weren't salvageable. It wasn't a realistic thing to repair, especially considering that it was swollen with water damage. But look at what we were able to come up with to save this piece and give it new life by making it look even older than it really was. The colors on here are just to die for. I love it. You guys chose this French blue, and boy, were you right. This piece sold on its first day in my booth immediately for $39.95, and I was actually surprised because I thought this second table would sell first, but this one, I can see why somebody fell in love with it. The next table is the one I thought would sell first. Was originally about a 1950s ranch style pine table. These are not super valuable, and it didn't have a ton of character. It was a little bit bland, and it needed something extra to give it that French country look, because as it is right now, it looks more farmhouse or rustic and definitely not French country. When I think of French country, I think of beautiful painted furniture, and I know a lot of people have a different idea of what French country is, but to me, I prefer the blue and whites and the more delicate things. I know that French country can also lean red, which I think is beautiful, but that's not really my particular style of decorating. So I would love to find out what you guys think is French country. What would you do to this table in particular to make it look French country if it was up to you how to design it? And also let me know what exactly you think encompasses the French country look. I love the toiles, I love the beautiful china, I love lighter colors, whites, blues, and tans and antique white colors like that chateau paint that I used earlier. But what do you think just screams French country? This is something that also changes depending on the generation who is decorating with that style. The more modern French country looks tend to be very white and blue, more like my style. But if you were to go back into French country of the past, it tends to be more yellows and reds and like coral colors. And so I would love to hear what you think is French country in the comment section down below. For the detail on the top of this table that is going to give it a French country look, I am going to be adding some grain sack stripes. I used to do this all the time in my early desert DIY years when I first started my channel, and as I was painting this, it was such a throwback to those days. But I love this design, and I think it's very classic, and it definitely reads as French inspired to me. And I think that it's just the right amount of character that this table was missing to give it that French country flair. And now to give this piece a little bit of an aged look and make it look a little older than it really is, just like with our first piece, I'm going to be distressing it just ever so slightly. I'm going to use a very light hand as well because I don't want to scuff up the satin finish of all of the paint. I just want to have very specific areas stand out that would have aged naturally if this thing were to be 200 years old. These are the areas that would have been used the most or bumped and bruised the most. And it also helps the shape stand out that's on this table and gives it a little bit extra detail for the eye to see. The last step is to add the rest of that aging wax to the top of the piece. I didn't need to add it to the legs of the piece because it already had some dimension with the distressing, but I wanted this white chateau color to have just a little bit of age to it instead of being quite bright white. As I'm looking at it finished, this reminds me so much of something that I could see featured in Miss Mustard Seed's home. She's such a good designer, and all the things she paints have just a beautiful French country look to them. If you haven't checked her out, go look her up. She really does some beautiful things. To me, these pieces turned out stunningly beautiful. I love their new look. I love the color that you guys chose, and I did what I thought was beautiful in French country. But I would love to hear what you guys think of these makeovers, so let me know in the comments section down below what you think of how these tables turned out. I think we really made some lemonade out of lemons for these two pieces. And now they're going to have some beautiful character in somebody else's home. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to hit subscribe down below so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you next time. Bye!